going on, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the NFL Betting Show. Week 3 already in the NFL. Chris Meaney, Prop God, and we have Dane Martinez here with you for the next little bit. We're going to break down our favorite picks, props, picks against the spread. We'll talk some Survivor. We'll talk some dogs here. We will be using the Prop Shop, the free tool over at FTNFantasy.com to get the best possible edge and the numbers. Save yourself a lot of time and a lot of cash. We have a link inside the description of this video bringing you to the Prop Shop. Just check out FTNFantasy.com up at the top and you will see the Prop Shop. First, before we get going here, we'll start over to you, Dane. You were here last week. At the end of the show, we were scanning through some dogs that we liked. We were like, hey, Cleveland seems like a live dog. The Bucks at plus 7.5. What about the Falcons at 6.5? We were just kind of going through the entire schedule looking for a dog. And as it turned out, you know, if you pick just one team, you may have gotten them right because there are a lot of upsets compared to week 1, Dane. It was really just chaos in week 2.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, week 2 is always that kind of overreaction week. People don't know exactly what to understand until the dust settles. But we helped you out here on the NFL Betting Show. We gave you our dogs. I think we hit with some of our Survivor plays. I know I hit with the under in Indianapolis, Green Bay. And there was a push in there. Depends on where you get the number. Because I know I gave out the Houston Texans -6 and they won by 6. But that's why you always have to go to the Prop Shop and get the best of the number so you don't get caught or juiced out. But we're back here for week 3 on the betting show.
And we love having Prop God here. Everything this guy touches is absolute gold. Dude, you are fire in our FTN Discord when it comes to the live betting. You've been doing some more video content with us over at FTN. If you don't follow Prop God, you got to. You got to get on it. He'll help you win some cash. And I just want to ask you a question off the top about like the rookie quarterbacks. We're 2 weeks in. We've yet to see a passing touchdown from any of the rookie quarterbacks. We've seen a couple of rushing touchdowns from Bo Nix and Jaden Daniels. Daniels hasn't really tossed the ball all that much, roughly 50 passing attempts. He has the lowest ADOT among any quarterback in the NFL. Caleb Williams has been sacked more than any quarterback in the NFL. DeAndre Swift has been stuffed behind the line more than any running back in the NFL. And Bo Nix had some moments, but he's chucked the ball a lot, but there hasn't been any passing touchdowns. Who's the first rookie quarterback, Prop God, to have a passing touchdown? And will we see it this weekend?
I think we will see it this weekend. If I'm looking at the matchups, you got Caleb versus the Colts. I think the Colts have the 3rd highest completion percentage allowed to quarterbacks. So that's possible. But we know the Colts have been terrible on the ground the last 2 weeks too. So, and Jaden Daniels has. I'm sorry, I said McDaniels. Who does Jaden have? Oh, he has the Bengals.
The Bengals on Monday Night Football. He may be forced to throw the football a little bit in that game.
Garbage time.
Yeah.
If I had to go with the first one to throw a touchdown, I would go with Caleb. I think he probably gets into the end zone against the Colts. I'm not a fan of Caleb though. If you don't know that, so it's funny you came to me with the rookie talk because I'm low on Caleb because I feel like Justin Fields is never getting a fair opportunity in Chicago. So I just don't like the way the organization did him. I know it's a lot of talk about people look at the numbers and just feel like Fields is bad. I don't want to make this a Fields spiel, but I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong throughout this season. So I'm not big on Caleb Williams at all. And usually when you have a number 1 prospect who gets all this hype as generational, it usually never works out. So unless it's Andrew
Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. Trevor Lawrence, one of those guys at the moment. I mean, so far it hasn't been great for Caleb Williams, to say the least. Some pressure in his face, but I would say he's the guy that I would go with him in this matchup, as you mentioned, against the Colts. Maybe he can get right and toss a touchdown. So I want to say what up to the chat. Seems like a lot of people are in here. We got Adam in the house. Welcome in. Adam. Good morning, everyone here. Don Mitchell. Yo, sup, Prop. What's going on? Chris. We have Hood Rich Money in the house. Chi-Town, what's going on? We do have a really good crew here. Meaney, Prop, and Dane, what's going on, fellas? Any questions at all, you can leave them here in the chat. If you have any starter sit stuff, we'll get to them at the end of the show. We'll recap with like a survivor pick and some of our favorite dogs here. It does seem like the crew is ready to go. So let's start here with some of our favorite picks. And I'll kick us off here because it does seem like we really like the Saints this week. And how could you not? I mean, they scored a point on their first 15 drives. They have 91 points over their first 2 games. And, Clint Kubiak in this offense is playing really well. So I am taking some chalky picks. I think numbers will move when it comes to Alvin Kamara. We'll talk about Rashid Shaheed and Derek Carr here in a little bit. Jumped on the Saints money line late Monday night at plus 104. That's the perks of being subbed with us. You get notified right away when we make a bet. I'm seeing them around minus 150 now. I would take anything for Alvin Kamara up to 70 rushing yards. Should it get that high? He's racked up 198. In 2 games on 35 carries. Using our DVOA statistics over at FTN Fantasy, you'll see that the Saints are the #1 rushing team in football. And the Eagles are dead last in rush DVOA. They rank 32nd. And I don't know if this is the game plan for Vic Fangio, but he seems content to just let teams run on them and get chunk yards. We saw that with Bijan Robinson and Tyler Algier on Monday Night Football. Both of those guys were having success running the football. Good offensive line in Atlanta, but a really good one here with the Saints as well. And, Dane, you and I have talked about Fuaga for, a few weeks before he was even drafted.
That's right.
Saints, that he would be a beast on the offensive line, and he has been for the Saints. And Clint Kubiak has this team, a lot of pre-snap motion, play action. What Derek Carr is doing is unsustainable, but let's ride this thing out, right? They were together in the preseason. The offense was cooking at the preseason. It's cooking right now. Carr's got 11.4 yards per attempt, which is by far the highest mark in the league. He's got a 77% completion rate. Those numbers won't be the same when we get into the middle of the season, but he's had like 70% completion seasons before. He's a very accurate quarterback. So we're leaning on Alvin Kamara here. Dane, I know you have something else for Kamara as well in this game as the longest rush. So it seems like we're both on Alvin. He's coming off a 4-touchdown game.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Chris, you have it in kind of rushing yards per game, and I'm echoing what you're saying, right? The Saints are top 5 in run yards. Also, what I like is they are averaging 2.7 yards before contact and a 51% success rate in the run game. And that means kind of like getting 4 or more on first down, getting what you need on second down or converting on third and fourth down. So the run game has certainly been effective. But here's what I'll add to that, Chris. The Philadelphia Eagles run defense has been bad. They're allowing a league worst 6.4 yards a carry, and they give up 3.2 yards before contact, right? So all the conditions are there, not only for Kamara to, have a good game overall, but I think he's going to break at least 1 for 15 yards. I mean, he's obviously got some juice. We know the conditions are there, both for the Saints before contact and the Eagles before contact. So I think he's going to have some lanes. And then when you're talking about a guy like Alvin Kamara, it's just making one guy miss for him to get a 15-yard carry. All he's got to do is get it once, and I think he will. So Alvin Kamara for at least 1 carry against the Eagles to go for 15 or more yards for me.
Yeah, I like it, right? Again, just how they're opening up the holes and they're running play action, and we'll get into some of their weapons, and prop will stay here with the Saints. I still think, by the way, the Saints at minus 145, minus 150, get them at minus 2.5 to win by a field goal at home against the Eagles. I really like that spot, but you're in on Derek Carr to continue to rock.
Yes, sir. And I think it's for all the reasons that you guys gave out with Kamara. The run game will set up those play action shots, and then boom, we get a 40, 50 plus yard completion. So the Packers actually, Jordan Love completed a 70-yard pass to Reed. I forgot how that went. I don't remember if that was the toss or not. I don't remember how it went with that game.
On the right sideline. It was down the right sideline.
Okay, yeah. And then Meaney had a 41-yard completion for the Falcons. So I think that Shaheed is a great pivot if you don't want to take the Carr look, but I think he's going to have probably about a 45-yard touchdown in this one. Just set up off the play action alone. Kamara's running well, and Carr is playing at a high level right now. I just see the chat said Carr in the election year is a real thing. So let's keep rolling with him.
Yeah, I am seeing that as well, which is, kind of jokes, but hey, when the day TV says y'all might think this is funny, but election year, Derek Carr is a real thing in 2016, 27 touchdown, 9 picks, 2020, had that nice season with the Saints. 4,100 yards, 27 picks, and 27 touchdowns, and 9 interceptions. He says dead serious. There's a theme here, and there's one more Saint play. You mentioned Rashid Shaheed. So who was the cornerback that was on, well, I guess safety, defensive back that was on Reed? It was Avonte Maddox. Who was on Darnell Mooney? Avonte Maddox. Watching Avonte Maddox get burned, I'm not surprised to see in our wide receiver cornerback matchup tool that he's allowed a league high 2.14 yards per route covered. Guess who he's going to be on this weekend? Rashid Shaheed. I like the over 46.5 receiving yards. We gave it on the show last week at over 34.5, 35.5, and our projections were like mid 40s. We have him for roughly 50. You just mentioned like what Carr's doing. We were all talking about the play action pass. They can't stop the run. They're setting up that play action perfectly. And this is a really good spot. And again, they scored in their first 15 drives. They have 90 plus points. I think we'll see a couple deep shots, right? They're going to run the football. We'll get the Carr rushing yards, we get the longest yard, and then boom, we get the completion from Derek Carr down the field to Rashid Shaheed. Darius Slay should be on Chris Olave, and Avonte Maddox has been lining up in the slot, and Rashid Shaheed has as well. So pretty good spot here for all the Saints, and he's plus 200 to score a touchdown. We hit last week over at FTN Fantasy, 3-1 for Rashid Shaheed to score a touchdown. So a lot of love for the New Orleans Saints. We'll see how they continue to ride this thing out. So there's a couple picks for us. Let's head back over to you, Dane Martinez. Ezekiel Elliott hasn't looked all that good running the ball, and they got the Baltimore Ravens this week.
Yeah, listen, I think this works on both sides, right? So first, let's talk about their opponent, the Baltimore Ravens. The Baltimore Ravens are one of the best run defenses in the NFL. I talk about yards before contact, right? They only allow less than a yard before contact, 0.8 yards per rush before contact. And then we're talking about Zeke Elliott, right? Like, he's not really getting much after contact these days. He's kind of that 3 yards in a cloud of dust. He is washed, in my opinion. The success rate against the Baltimore Ravens is also lowest in the NFL. Dallas is only averaging 3.7 yards a rush. That is bottom 7 in the NFL. And here's the thing, Zeke in week 1, when Dallas absolutely curb stomped the Cleveland Browns, he only had 40 yards on the ground. Okay. In week 2, when they lost and they had a negative game script, he only had 16 yards on the ground. I actually think that this is a bounce back game for the Baltimore Ravens. I think Baltimore is going to be up. I think Dallas is going to have to throw the ball more. And if you look in the first 2 weeks of the season with Zeke Elliott, it's almost been an even split with Rico Dowdle. You know, one has 15 carries, one has 16 carries. So Dowdle is on the field a ton, and I just think it's going to be slow going for Zeke Elliott. He's only averaged 28 yards per game. They are hanging 33.5, I believe, is the number that you can go under. That's the highest number. You got to go to the prop shop, right? Some places may have 32. Some places may have 33. The juice may be different, but I think it's going to be tough sledding for Ezekiel Elliott, and then ultimately they're going to be in a negative game script. So I am happy going under 33.5 yards for Zeke.
I'm kind of surprised to hear Jerry say that Dalvin Cook, is just going to continue to stay on the sidelines, because when I watch Zeke, it doesn't look all that good. And I just feel like, hey, maybe at some point they may decide that they're going to get Dalvin Cook in there, and he may not look all that better, but maybe he just gets in there and gets a few touches, but it doesn't sound like that's going to be the case this week. And I was wondering about Henry too. And I know the offensive line in Baltimore hasn't been fantastic prop to start. A lot of talk in Baltimore. Why didn't they lean on Henry, late in that game against the Raiders? 66.5 rushing yards, knowing what you just saw last week against Dallas. It seems prop. I don't know how you feel about the Cowboys and the Ravens, but every time Dallas loses, it's because teams run all over them. This time last year, they had that loss against the Cardinals. James Conner and company looked good in the playoffs. We remember that the Packers and Aaron Jones ran all over them. How about last week and the Saints? Whatever they wanted to do, inside, outside, they just ran all over the Dallas Cowboys. And I wonder if Baltimore leans on Derrick Henry here. It's just odd to see a rushing prop at 66.5. Do you have any thoughts on the Ravens and Cowboys game prop?
Yeah, thoughts on the game is it's kind of tough for me to see the Ravens leaving here 0-3, or just starting the season 0-3, but it's very possible, especially being in Dallas. But like you said, I think if you're gonna beat the Cowboys, it's gonna be on the ground. So I'm not mad at the Henry look, but I really like his 2+ touchdowns in this spot. And not just because of Kamara, but we know like the struggle with Dallas is teams with the ability to run the ball pretty much at will, and Henry can still do that. It was a little ugly in the first half last week, but he did get there. He got into the end zone, and I think he covered his yard. No, I don't know. I forgot.
Yeah, he did.
He did. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, it took a while, but
and he got to like 79, I believe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. See, I think he can still get there. The usage, I'm not too worried about it. I thought he was going to be used more.
Same.
To start the year, but they probably don't want to get a lot of wear on those tires. It's going to be a long season, so. But I think his anytime touchdown is -125, and it may be the best it's been since week 1. And I don't remember what his odds were in week 1, but I think he's a potential guy to get 2+ touchdowns. The anytime is -125. The 2+, and that's on FanDuel. The 2+ is +490. You may be able to get that even better if you're using the prop shop too.
Yeah. He made to score a touchdown every single week. We talked about that, I think, all offseason. All right, let's head to another game that should be entertaining. I mean, Baltimore and Dallas should be a good one, but how about Arizona and Detroit? A high total game in the 50s, and we like a lot of wide receivers in this game. We'll start here with you, Prop. Looking at Jameson Williams here on the over on the longest reception at 22.5 receiving yards. I have in the tracker over 50.5 receiving yards. I missed early. I think I might have to just get a notification when Jameson Williams props just come out, because people are just going to bet them immediately and they're going to jump up 45 to 50. We know that he can get 50 on one catch, extremely high ADOT, and he's getting a lot of usage so far to start. It's really hurt Sam Laporta's outlook. But Jameson Williams led the team in week 1 in targets, yards, and catches. It was a career week for him. And in week 2, even with all the work from Amon-Ra, J-Mo still had a ton of work. So what do you like about his prop here this week in a matchup against the Cardinals?
I just think it's a dream spot for him. So you mentioned the success he's had on the deep shots already. He's got 2 50+ yard receptions out the gate, 52 yards against the Rams, and then 50 yards against Tampa Bay. Amon-Ra has 25 targets this season, and J-Mo has 20, so he's right there. I think that'll continue. Amon-Ra is a bit banged up, but it seems to not be serious. He was a full participant in practice yesterday, but I think the focus will be on Amon-Ra, right? He has a 99% edge in our wide receiver versus cornerback matchup tool. That's the craziest number I've ever seen from our projections. So I'm not mad at Amon-Ra, but I mean, the Cardinals know as well who, to try to focus on him if you can. But I think it'll open up the opportunities for J-Mo to get a deep shot.
Yeah, I like J-Mo to get some deep shots, and we saw Marvin Harrison Jr. Pop off in week number 2. It was a quiet week 1. There's a little bit of a disconnect between him and Kyler. I think, he ran a go route against the Bills, and Kyler thought it was a comeback, and that was the first target, and then the second target was a drop, and then, he really didn't look his way after that, but he targeted him early and often in week number 2. He had 130 yards on 4 catches. He had 8 targets and 2 touchdowns. It's clear he's going to be a force in the league. In fact, you can get offensive rookie of the year at +325 right now. I know Caleb Williams was the favorite. He's not anymore. I'm not really feeling Caleb. We just talked about that. Jaden Daniels is not pushing the ball down the field. I think Marvin Harrison Jr., if he has another big week this week against Detroit, he could be like +150 or something like that. But for this game, I'm seeing a 16.5 ADOT average depth of target over FTN Fantasy. Same with Shaheed. He has an ADOT that's like 17. So both of these guys healthy, average depth of target. And you saw the yak potential after that. That second touchdown, the yards after the catch, that was just such a terrific run that he had. So I'm taking the over 57.5, and I would consider laddering him up to 100 at +425 in a potential shootout. So far, the Lions, this is a team that's allowed the most receiving yards to opposing wide receivers. So I think this is a good spot for J-Mo, for Marv, and for Amon-Ra, and just to have fun here, guys, over at Bet365 with some ladders and milestones. You see Amon-Ra for 100 yards at +215, Marvin Harrison Jr. at +425. I think DraftKings is actually hanging 5-1 for him to hit the century mark through the air, and then Jameson Williams there at 6-1. Dane, do you have a favorite of the 3? Who do you think's most likely to pop off and have 100 yards?
Of those 3, it would be Amon-Ra St. Brown for me. I think, listen, he had a slow week 1, but that was also because the Rams were focused on him and taking him away. They remember what he did to them in that playoff game, right? And so you saw him kind of bounce back in week 2. I think he continues to do well here in week 3. But in this game, first of all, because of all this goodness and production, I think it's one of the highest totals on the board. Definitely a game to consider stacking in DFS. But honestly, I like the home team as a home dog, and you're getting a field goal here. So I like the Arizona Cardinals +3. They're +130 on the money line. I think that's worth your time as well. I mean, we're talking all about the New Orleans Saints offense, right? Scoring like 40 points a game. The Arizona Cardinals are second in the NFL, scoring 34.5 points a game. I think they're going to be able to keep it up. And here's the difference with Kyler Murray. In fantasy, he's QB3 right now, but here's the key. No interceptions so far for Kyler Murray. He's taking care of the ball. You put that up against the Detroit pass defense that's allowing 251 yards a game. That is bottom 6 in the NFL. Kyler not only is taking care of the ball, he's completing passes. His adjusted completion percentage, which is a great stat over at the Stats Hub here at FTN, is 82.3%. That's 6th best in the NFL. So he's hitting his receivers against the defense that is giving up passing yards. I think Arizona will continue to be able to score. James Conner is doing very well as well. He's got the top avoided tackle rate, which is another great stat over on the Stats Hub. His avoided tackle rate is 35%. That is the best in the NFL for guys who actually have, 30, 35 carries and are not just, a couple of carries here or there. I think this is going to be a shootout like we're talking about. So to me, this seems like even if Arizona loses, that a backdoor cover could be in play, that it could be a game where the last team who has the ball actually wins the game, a final possession kind of game to me. And here's the other thing. We've been talking about it. I know, Meaney, you and I have been talking about it since the summertime. Jared Goff, indoors, outdoors. Jared Goff, home and away. The Detroit Lions have played both of their games at home so far this season. And even then, Jared Goff, 1 touchdown, 3 interceptions. So it's a slow start for Goff. And now he finally goes on the road. So I'm expecting not the best of Jared Goff, who's had a slow start already. I think the Arizona offense, who has been very good and very kind of, not making as many mistakes as they have in previous years. I think it's a recipe for Arizona to really hang in what maybe people thought was a litmus test kind of measuring stick game against Detroit. I think Arizona is going to show out today, and Detroit going on the road for the first time this season, it may not look as good. So give me a field goal. Give me the home dogs in the desert.
Yeah, I love it. The +3 is something I'm going to pick in my own spread pool, and I may be a little bit of a coward and spend more juice on the +3.5, just to kind of get it, because I think it's going to be a field goal game. And our NFL betting model agrees with you. It has a Detroit 26 to Arizona 24.4 score, so that would get there for you. And by the way, the NFL betting model, it nailed the Falcons-Eagles score on Monday night. The exact score. That's crazy. And the best edge, as we've talked up the Saints, is the Saints at -2.5. It's an 11% edge. Anything over 10% edge is got a pretty good track record since the start of last season. So Arizona +3 as a dog, and you're right, Jared Goff does not look good at all. I don't think the Lions, Dan Campbell, the Lions want him tossing the football 55 times a game. Maybe they can lean on the ground game and the offensive line in this one. Is there anything else, prop, that you like here this weekend? It seems like we both like George Pickens as a potential bounce back in this spot against the Chargers, or at least I do. Can you feel me on this one?
Oh, yeah. I think Pickens is in a great spot. He has a 75% edge in our matchup tools as well. I like Fire Move too, but I like Pickens up to about 70 yards. He had a 51-yard completion call back last week. I forgot what the yards on the other one were, but I mean, he was cooking Pat Surtain, and it was pretty clear. So the Steelers had about 112 yards called back from penalties, so I expect the offense to be a bit better. I'm not a believer in the Chargers secondary. I respect the offense in the run game, but I'm still not sold on the Charger defense. So I think Pickens will have a great game this Sunday.
Yeah, this number is too low. I mean, he basically had this on 1 or 2 catches in week 1, and you mentioned the 51-yarder that came back, and really the offense is just going to him. A little bit of Pat Freiermuth. They're running the football. But yeah, much easier matchup this week, as you mentioned, the wide receiver cornerback matchup tool. And just again, too low here for a guy that led the NFL in yards per catch last season. A lot of these guys that we've talked about, wide receivers like George Pickens, Jameson Williams, Marvin Harrison Jr., Rashid Shaheed, like these guys have some high ADOT. They could be boom or bust at times in fantasy, but they could get to their numbers that we're talking about here in like 1 or 2 grabs, the way that the offense is set up. So George Pickens, a big time edge, and our guy Marshall was all over the Pickens receiving yard prop in our tracker as well. So one more here from Dane, and then we can wrap up with maybe a couple dogs and some survivor talk, talking about traveling from one part of the world to the other, really, like when it comes to North America or North America in the States. Like this is the longest travel possible. You're leaning here with Seattle over a Miami squad that has to adapt without Tua under center.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, not with the Germany or the London or the Brazil games.
Fair.
This is the longest flight for a team in the continental United States. People talk about the body clock all the time. And people talk about that West Coast team going east for a 1:00 start. Well, sometimes it's in play the other way around. Miami going to Seattle, like you said, the longest flight possible in the continental U.S. for professional sports here. But the other thing is, listen, we know there's no Tua Tagovailoa. It's going to be Skylar Thompson for the Miami Dolphins, and I think he's going to struggle. It's a definite downgrade to the Dolphins offense and to those wide receivers, right? But here's the thing, Seattle, if you look at it, they played 2 pretty good defenses in the first 2 weeks, right? The Patriots and the Broncos. So I finally think we're going to see kind of this new Ryan Grubb offense in full form. Miami allows 12 yards per completion. That is bottom 10 in the NFL. And Seattle, Geno Smith is completing passes at a 73-74% rate, right? So they are getting the ball out. I think they are going to be able to score and score big against this Miami defense. I think, listen, if you get away from Jalen Ramsey, maybe he's on DK. I think this is a JSN game. But overall, when I put together the fact that Seattle's played 2 good defenses and now they get an easier matchup against Miami, and that Miami is going to be led by Skylar Thompson, I do not see the Dolphins being able to keep up. So I'll lay the 4.5, and I'll take Seattle at home against the Dolphins.
Yeah, I dig that. JSN season here from SD. Massive game last week. A lot of targets for him and DK Metcalf with Tyler Lockett playing behind both of those guys. I was looking at JSN. His catch props at 4.5. It's juiced at -140. If you want to get on that, I'd get on it now because I do see that moving to 5.5, maybe plus money here over the next couple of days, and see like -150 in certain spots for JSN. His receiving yard props at 52.5. One note here from Adams Digest here. A Chan receiving yards, check down King, Skylar Thompson. That's not the note that I wanted to bring up, but I do, Raheem Mostert is back at practice, but I do expect Miami to use all of these backs. Kind of concerned about Tyreek Hill. I know he's a stud, but we viewed him as like the top wide receiver in football, and now he's without Tua, so that's tough there. Is there any appeal, guys, for the Bengals? There was Joe Burrow against Washington secondary. That's a Monday Night Football game. We don't know about T. Higgins, but it does sound like he's trending in the right direction. There's no prop on him. Jamar Chase's receiving yard prop is 80.5. It's kind of high considering he hasn't done a whole lot, but it is Washington secondary. Dane, you've been talking up Mike Gesicki a little bit. I think he's in an interesting spot, especially if there's no T. Higgins. His receiving yard prop is 28.5, and his catch prop's at 2.5, fairly juiced. But yeah, Cincinnati, typically slow starters prop, but a good spot for Joe Burrow and company to get going. And heck, they may just lean on Zach Moss a little bit in this game too. He's played 80% of the snaps compared to Chase Brown, just 20% of the snaps. Any appeal on Cincinnati and Joe Burrow, get right spot for the offense against Washington?
Yeah, I think this is the Jamar Chase week. Monday Night Football primetime spot. And you get the worst secondary in football over the last 2 seasons. And if Higgins plays, I think it opens up more opportunities for Chase. But when it comes to Washington, I don't think there's anything they could do to stop him. I'm not even worried about double coverage or anything like that. I think Chase is just going to feast. You add the narratives in there too with the media talking. He had a costly penalty in that game that pretty much cost the Bengals a drive with the personal foul. I'm sorry, not the personal foul, but when he was arguing with the ref. So
oh yeah, Chase, he's fired up. Bengals fire him up, man.
Yeah. I think Chase is in a great spot. So I like him actually for 100+ yards on Monday night.
Nice.
Oh, and also in our matchup too, he has a 92.3% edge. He was in the top 4. So we love him on the projections too.
Oh yeah, I mean the wide receiver quarterback matchup tool is just one of my favorite tools that we have going at FTN. Just seeing where the wide receivers line up, the corners, and mentioned earlier, you can just sort through yards per route run covered, and you see Avonte Maddox, as I mentioned up at the top, Rashid Shaheed, number 2 Carlton Davis, who's going to see Marvin Harrison Jr. So some good spots for some wide receiver, maybe a get right spot for Amari Cooper. He's got like 17 targets, but he's hardly caught any of them. It is against the Giants. I kind of think that, he'll have a breakout game this week as well. So lots of props, lots of picks that we like. Let's round out here with just take a look at the schedule. If you're still hanging around in Survivor, you don't need our help. Not that we haven't had some good picks here, but you're doing pretty good because last week was certainly a bloodbath. I'm out in one of my Survivor leagues, took the chalk last week in Baltimore, and then the other one I just picked on Carolina, but now they have Andy Dalton under center, so I don't know if I could actually go with the Raiders here this week at -5. Some Survivor picks out there that we could roll with. Maybe the Browns at home, 6.5-point favorites against the Giants. I already used the Saints myself week 1 against Carolina, but I think that they are an option. Tampa's 6.5-point favorites here against the Bucks. We have the Niners touchdown favorites against the Rams. I know the Niners are without Deebo Samuel and Christian McCaffrey, but the Rams were without Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, multiple players in the offensive line and on the defensive side as well. They're banged up considerably. And then we have the Bengals, who we just talked about, at -7.5 favorites on Monday Night Football. 2 Monday Night Football games, by the way, this week. The Bills are at home, 5-point favorites against the Jags. Dane, still alive in Survivor. Where are you going?
Yeah, I mean, we just talked about it. For me, it's the Cincinnati Bengals, and it's not really that big of a question for me. I am in one pool. I told you on our Sirius show, Chris, that had about 125 people, and I am one of only 10 people still left after week 2. In week 2, I had the Houston Texans that got through. So for me, it's Cincinnati. We were just talking about how that Bengals pass offense may be able to feast a little bit against Washington. Like I said, Cincy also, remember, in their first 2 weeks, they played the New England defense and the Kansas City defense. And now they get, like we've been saying, the worst secondary in football. I think this is Burrow. I think this is Chase. And one note that I'll say, I see some people in the chat, and you mentioned the 49ers. I know that the Rams are banged up, right? Like 3/5 of their offensive line, no Puka, no Kupp. However, just as a general rule of thumb for me, guys, I don't like to play division matchups, and I don't like to play road teams. And San Francisco qualifies as both. I mean, last week they were 5.5-point favorites, but they were on the road at Minnesota, and they lost the game outright, knocking a bunch of people out of their Survivor pool. So I would be a little careful about that Niners pick, especially on the road in the division. For me, it is Cincinnati at home in a primetime national TV spot against an interconference matchup that's young. It'll be Jaden Daniels' first time on prime time in the NFL. So for me, it's all Cincy all the time in Survivor.
Love it. Prop God, where would you go in Survivor if there's another way out apart from Cincinnati?
I am fading Bo Nix until the wheels fall off. So Tampa Bay, he's thrown 2 picks, 4 picks total through 2 games. I just think Bo Nix is terrible. And I trust the Tampa Bay Buccaneers to be able to move the football. I really love Chris Godwin this week. We didn't mention his props, but I think Surtain will be probably shadowing Evans for a bit, and Godwin's been a slot demon. So I think Godwin is in a great spot. He's leading Tampa in targets as well. I think he feasts. I would take his over receptions and over receiving yards. He's a ladder candidate too. So I like Tampa pretty big.
Yeah, Baker's been playing good. He's got at least 2 touchdowns, I think, in 9 of his last 10 games dating back to last year. He's got like 12 in his last 4. He had 1 through the air, 1 on the ground. We were actually all over Chris Godwin last week against Detroit, and we hit that one pretty early. He had to hit the century mark and had the catches. So his receiving yard numbers at 64.5, his catch props at 5.5. I like both of those. What you mentioned, I think is exactly what we're going to see with Surtain on Mike Evans and Chris Godwin playing like in the slot 70% of the time, which he did a couple years ago. Last year wasn't really the case for him. He's back in the slot where he's had most success over his NFL career. For example, this is why the prop shop is awesome. FanDuel -120 for over 5.5 catches. BetMGM -155 for over 5.5 catches. So there's a big difference between the two books. Same catch number, but the juice is significantly different. Even DraftKings -135, 365 -145, Caesars -143, BetRivers -127. So FanDuel hanging the best number on Godwin at -120 for 6 catches. So yeah, I'm with you guys. I don't think you really need to go to the Saints route. I think you could just take the Bengals, or you can take the Bucks, at home against Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos. So that'll do it, guys. Appreciate you guys taking the time to hang out with us. Godwin looking like, the knee injury and everything with Godwin. Like, I shout out to Scott Spratt. He does this article in the offseason and throughout the year of just like lucky and unlucky touchdowns. And he talked about Godwin all last year. He had the same amount of red zone targets as Mike Evans, and he just wasn't scoring touchdowns. And look, it's worked so far through 2 games. He has the exact same amount of touchdowns he had last year. It's 2 touchdowns. So it is nuts. And sometimes these, regress in a positive way. Other times, it doesn't. We see that more in baseball, but we're seeing it right now with Chris Godwin. So appreciate you guys. If you have any questions at all, leave them in the comment section. Always circling back on these videos, whether it's a start or sit question, a number is moved. Do we still like this number? If you want to hang out with us, be part of the fam, sign up over at ftnfantasy.com/pricing. When you sign up for like the betting package, you're going to get picks from everybody across all sports. We got MLB postseason heating up here, college basketball around the corner with Mike Randall. You got college football happening, NHL is around the corner, NBA, and you get all the tools and the projections. And I think the best thing, apart from the tools and projection, you get to chat to Prop God live during a game. He's in the Discord. He's letting people know, I like this pick. Let's jump on it now. He's winning people cash. Dane's doing some live videos for us as well over at FTN. So we have you covered over at FTN if you NHL. That's right. Yeah. Some people out there that like hockey. Hunter Henry over 0.5 first quarter receiving yards tonight.
You know, the hammer out for that.
Prop, you do a really good job of jumping on those first quarter props and like drive props. Like there's a like when you jumped on Saquon Barkley at like plus 200 to have 1 receiving yard in like a quarter, I was just like, my goodness, like there's. I know Dane's a big live better, but Prop, there's a lot of value when it comes to live betting. When you're following a game like we're doing primetime standalone games, we're following, we're saying, listen, there's a like Shakir last week against the Dolphins just looked like Ramsey had Coleman locked in, and we were seeing an edge with Shakir, and we were going to him consistently with each drive, and there was plus money on a lot of those props.
Plus 220 just for a catch on one of the drives. And it's just crazy. And that's why I love live betting the primetime games, because you get a true feel of the game. It's hard to do it on Sundays with live bets. That's why I don't do it, because it's too much action going on at once. But you can just sit and watch a game and see the swing of things. Then boom, even Jonnu Smith was a great live spot in that one too. So we will be live doing that in the Discord tonight too. By the way, for the people on YouTube, definitely get you some membership. Get the membership today. Sure.
Yeah, we kept I told Dane on the series show, we kept going like Jonnu over 11.5, over 15.5, 22.5, 38.5, 55.5, and Dana was just plus money every time.
Yeah, and here's the thing. I love what you guys are saying. I was doing it. I did it on the Thursday night football game with an under on Tyreek Hill because I saw the way Buffalo was covering him. That's one way to do it. I did it on, you're talking about to get a reception on a specific drive. I was doing it with Cooper Kupp on one of the standalone games. And yeah, it was like minus 120, but I didn't give a damn.
He's getting it every drive,
Every drive, he's going to get a target. He's going to get a catch. I think he had 21 targets in that game he wound up with, right? So yeah, they give you some opportunities there to be sure. Another thing I like, there's also the result of the drive, and anytime tonight, anytime the Patriots are starting their drive on their own 30 or earlier, give me the punt at like minus 120. You know what I mean? Like, they're not going to score, 5 drives tonight against this Jets defense, in my opinion. So if you keep hammering that, as long as the field position is in your favor, I like that as an approach as well.
At Spit
you also
Speeds.
can watch that real quick, Chris. Because when I was live on YouTube Monday, I hit B. John Robinson to have a 10+ yard rush on next drive, and it was plus 300. That's crazy. But we know how the Eagles defense was getting gashed, so I just knew the opportunity was going to be there, and he got it the first play of the drive. It was crazy. But man, the live market is just it's insane.
It really is. And like I said, there are some edges, especially when you're following a game and you can just see the trends and what's happening and what defenses are doing and taking away certain players. At Dane's point with Tyreek Hill, it opens up other avenues for certain players. And getting plus money on something like that is wild, especially when you see Vic Fangio. He just wasn't putting another defender in the box. Like I said, he was like, you're not going to beat us over top. Go ahead and take your run. Then they call the zero blitz. And then all of a sudden Mooney's in the house. So you're following a game like that. And it's a whole lot of fun when the picks are on your side. And like I said, hang out in the Discord and we'll be there with you guys through all the island games as well. Thanks to Prop, I got Barkley 3 catches plus 108. Yeah, absolutely. I think we jumped on Saquon live bet receiving, and we did the same with Devon Achane in that game when Tua went down as well. All right, guys, appreciate you. At Spittin' Speeds _prop god, myself at Chris Meaney. We will be back next week, but check out all the picks and all the bets over at FTNFantasy.com. Good luck. Let the winners be yours. We'll chat to you soon. Cheers.